What's up, y'all? It's your boy Gary Knighton, and I want to say welcome to the Hope and Help podcast. And I know it looks a little different today because I'm not in my little office where my podcasting space where I shoot. I don't. There's no bells and whistles in here today. I'm just in the garage because I feel like today's topic is heavy enough, and we don't need form or fashion. We just need to feel each other because I want to talk authentically from just a personal experience, and I want to encourage people who are in right now a similar season that I got out of. Um, and I'm going to talk to people today who are in the middle. Today's hope and help is for people who are in the middle, people who feel like they're in a limbo kind of season of life. You're not where you were, you're not where you hope you're going, but you're somewhere in the middle, and it's not a place that you feel completely fulfilled in. It's a transitory place. It's a stop along the path. It's a rest stop, but not a permanent place. And I want to say this to you today for those who feel like you're in a middle, you're in a limbo, you're in a stuck, a frozen place. It's safer than where you were, but it's not where you're ultimately going. And you need a little encouragement today to get out of that space. And I'm here for you today to help you out of the limbo space. And again, limbo for me today, limbo as I'm defining it, is that space in between. It's the place that's safe but not secure. It's the place that's better but not the best. It's the place that you land sometimes in between hardship and getting out of hardship and going into the unknown. And I want to talk to my friends, the tribe of hope and help who are in the limbo season. And I want to tell you this because nobody else is going to tell you this directly as I'm going to tell you. And this is what I want to say to you. Limbo is not a place to live. Limbo is a place to rest, to recover, to regroup, but limbo is not a place to lay down your head and plant roots. Limbo is a temporary place. It is not a place for you to take up residence. And I know because I've been there, because limbo sometimes is better than when you've been, and you can kind of get into this stupor where you're just kind of going through the motions, or you're not dealing with the pain of what's in front of you, but you left the pain of what's behind you, and you're comfortable in limbo. But today, I want to let you know, because I love you, and I am you, and I was you, that limbo is not a place that you can live. It's not a place to take up residence. And I want to help you, right? Because limbo is a place where we get to pause. It's where we settle. It's where we take temporary residence, right? And I wrote some stuff down because this is deep. It's a place where we need to stay for a moment because we might have been hurt. We might have gone through a lot to get out of what we were in. And it's a place where we need a minute because where we're going has fear. It has big decisions to make. We're fatigued, right? And we're waiting on something to change, or even someone to do better, or circumstances to change. But we're not ready for forward yet because it took so much courage to get out. In limbo, as I was saying, sometimes limbo is necessary. Sometimes limbo is necessary because it took courage, it took strength, it took bravery to leave the places that we were in. It took all we had to leave them. And so sometimes limbo for a very short season is a good thing, but it's not the best thing long term, right? And so I want to encourage you, no matter how helpful limbo may be to the weary sojourner, to the person who needs a break because life has been beating you down, limbo, no matter what, is not a place that you can live. It's not a place to take up residence, and it's not a place to settle. It's not a place for long-term growth, right? It's just a waypoint on the way to where you're going, right? And it's not a permanent location. And here's the truth. Some of us have been stuck in limbo for a while. We've been stuck in limbo for a little while because the next part of our journey is frightening, it's difficult, it's unpredictable, and it may stir up feelings and attention that we're not ready to deal with. And I get it. I'm not judging you. I'm just speaking my truth about where I was in limbo for almost a year. I was in limbo for almost a year, leaving out of my relationship, and I was in limbo. I had good reason to go, right? But going came with a bunch of hard decisions. Like, how do you leave something you've been in for 15 years, 10 years married, 15 years together, right? But I had to move on. But it was tough because the decisions I had to make were going to hurt people. Decisions we're going to make were going to potentially change my future for me. And it was hard. It was hard to get out of limbo, and I stayed too long. I stayed too long. Thank God that He has an ultimate plan for my life. But I feel like I stayed in limbo too long, right? And I just want to encourage those of you who are in limbo, because I've been here, been through it, and I'm out of it. I just want to come back and speak life into you if you're in limbo. Listen, here's why limbo is not a place to live. I'm going to give you a few reasons why that I've discovered over life that why limbo isn't a place to live. One of the first reasons why is that, and why limbo is dangerous for us, is because limbo limits what we can give and what we can receive. That's huge, right? We can't legitimately give ourselves to anything and anyone fully until we finish what we've ended. I know that sounds crazy. Until we finish what we've moved out of, we really can't give anybody ourselves fully. We can't give our next opportunity our full attention, because there's still so much unfinished work. And we can only give the next things that are coming in our life, if any, give them pieces, give them parts of us, but never give them our whole selves, because we're not done with where we came from. Limbo limits what we can give to people and what we can receive from people. And don't get me wrong, there are people who will work with you, there are people who will walk with you through this limbo season, but not everybody has the capacity to walk with you through a limbo season. Not everybody has the patience to walk with you through a limbo season. And so if you're in a limbo season, you need to remember while you're here that whatever you're experiencing right now, while it might feel safer, might feel better, it might feel like a relief, it is also a limitation, because you cannot give or receive everything that fully can be yours in a limbo season. And so people might walk with you, but let's be honest, most people don't want the baggage of your life in limbo. And it's sad, because sometimes people miss out on good people, good opportunities, good connections, because they're not willing to deal with people who are going through. But if we're being honest, a lot of people don't want to deal with anybody in limbo, right? And here's the truth. I just believe that God won't send us something new until we move on from the middle. All right, until we move on, we can't get something new, right? If we're double-minded and we haven't made a decision yet, because we got out, we made that decision, but we're not sure about the future, there's a lot we can't receive if we're double-minded people, right? And we're unstable, and we shouldn't expect to receive anything for the next season in the limbo season, in that place of indecision, right? And I get it. I was there, but these are just the facts, right? The other thing that's so important for us to remember why we're in limbo and why it's so dangerous is limbo adds length to an already long journey. It just does. It makes what's already a long process, one that you already want to get out of, it makes it longer. It prolongs what could be a shorter period of time and lengthens the time. It's already a dreadful time. It's already a painful time. It's already a time that just feels too long when you're going through, because nobody really wants to go through the legalities. Nobody really wants to go through just the changes, the formalities of it all. And it's a process. But when you're in limbo and you're in the place of indecision and you settled here, it makes an already painful, long process just worse. It doesn't make it any better. And it's not to say that we should rush through the limbo season, but we shouldn't lag unnecessarily, right? We don't have to be there longer than we need to be, right? Limbo is necessary for a second, but we need to move on at some point, right? Listen, the longer we take to move on, we miss and risk time-sensitive opportunities and moments. Listen, stuff is going to pass us by while we're in limbo. that we could have received if we had have just moved forward with, not rushing, but with intentionality, pushing through the pain, pushing through the issues that come up, instead of just kind of fearing the next decision, but just adding some progress to the movement of our life in that season. It doesn't have to be as long as it could be, is what I'm trying to say. Listen, other thing that's so true, and why it's also limbo is so dangerous for us long term, is that limbo doesn't lessen the pain that we eventually face. I think a lot of times we're in limbo longer than we should be because we don't want to face what we have to face. Like, we don't want to face the pain. We don't want to face the hardship, the dread that comes with the decisions we have to make. But the truth is, just because we delay it doesn't mean it's going to diminish the it's not going to diminish the pain. It's not going to diminish the sorrow. At some point, we're going to have to face it, because if we want to fix it, we're going to have to face it. And I think a lot of us, if we're being honest, the reason why we are stuck in indecision is because we know it's going to be painful. But staying in limbo doesn't dampen the dread. It doesn't minimize, like, the feelings of anxiety and anguish. It doesn't do anything to it. It just prolongs it. And so limbo doesn't lessen the pain. It just pushes it off. And eventually we're going to have to face it. So it's really inevitable. And sometimes the limbo gives us this cushion that never really cushions us from what we have to experience. And last thing is that a prolonged limbo season can make us look lackadaisical. And I'm not saying we should worry about optics, but it does create optics. It does create optics when you're said you're serious about moving on. People start to think that you're not as serious, right? Your support system, your people who are with you, and some people will get it because they've been there. But then also people who have been there are kind of like, you need to get through it because the Band-Aid's been pulled off for them. So they're where I am at now, giving that advice back, like, just do it, because they know they're gonna make it through it, or they made it through it. But when we don't move, limbo makes us look lackadaisical. It makes us look like we weren't serious about it. That maybe what we went through wasn't so bad, and so we were just kind of mad at the moment, and now we're not so sure about it. But let me tell you, you need to move forward, not because of the optics, because you need to make sure that you're not being lackadaisical about something that you said was very serious. And so, again, it's not about the appearance per se, but we're starting to communicate this narrative to people that we're kind of crying wolf, that it wasn't so serious, because if it was so serious, why aren't you moving on? And this is not even in my show notes, but I want to say this to us today, that this is important. Another reason why, a bonus reason why limbo is dangerous, because time has the tendency to sanitize our memory. And this is important. The longer you stay in limbo, I was talking to an amazing individual who's from a different part of the world the other day, and we were talking about how nostalgia plays tricks on our minds. And it can have us thinking that what we went through wasn't so bad. And time has a way of just, whitewashing, sanitizing our experience to the point where we feel like, oh, well, was it really that bad? Or we start thinking about memories and forgetting the hardship. We just think about the good times. We think about the nice times, but, moving forward in stride, not rushing, not slow poking, but moving forward in a healthy stride. Make sure that we're not allowing time to wash over the real issues that happened, to wash over the real pain we suffered, to wash over the real offenses we faced. And it's so important that when we're in limbo, that we don't linger there to the point where we've forgotten and sometimes somehow minimized the magnitude of what made us move on in the first place. So You know, limbo can be dangerous for us if we linger there. It's not a place to live. I don't know who needs to hear this. I feel it in my soul. Limbo is not a place to live. It's not a place to take up residence. It's a place for a brief safety to catch your breath, but it is not a place for you to put down roots. We need to leave limbo because it's not where we can live. Listen, let me tell you just one major truth that got me off the fence. Maybe I'll share two, but just the one for sure. My sister reminded me after I gave this sermon point to her a while back in my place of indecision, right? She said to me, because I had said to her at one point in a sermon, and I was sharing my sermon notes with her, and I said that if we feel like we could ruin God's plan for our lives, we think far too much of ourselves and far too little of God. Like, and one of my struggles in the limbo season was thinking that I was going to make the wrong decision. And I heard Pastor Darius Daniels said that the reason why we're being indecisive right now is not because we're indecisive people. It's because we're people who want to make the right decisions. And because we're not sure how the decision will work out, we don't make any decision, and it makes us look indecisive. But the issue is that we want to control the outcome. The issue is that we want to kind of not manipulate, but control the narrative. And the issue for me was I thought that I was going to ruin God's plan for my life, for my family, for the people involved in my life. And I had to come to realize, and I had to remind myself and my sister, God sent my sister to remind me of my own sermon point, that if I thought I could ruin God's plan for my life, the sovereign's plan for my life, by making one decision that might be wrong, that I thought far too much of my own power and far too little of God's power to be sovereign in my life, even though I make mistakes. Like the fact that God has factored in everything that I've gone through in my life in his plan to call me to do great things for him and his kingdom. If I thought I could make one move that he hadn't already anticipated, I was kidding myself. And it was on that day, walking through a soccer field while my kids are playing soccer, talking on the phone, that I realized that all my fear was based on the fact that I wasn't trusting ultimately in God's plan, that he had me moving forward. And so because I was scared of what was to come, because I thought I had that much power, it left me in limbo longer. And another thing that I will give this second point, another thing that really changed for me was that I also realized, again, as I noted, why it's dangerous, is that I could not receive what was next for my life. I wasn't going to get anything from God being in a double-minded state. When I was in limbo, I took a week to fast off of social media and to just get my mind, because you know what? When you're going through limbo, here's another point. Let me just put it down before I forget. You got to limit your intake during limbo, because there's so much information on the internet. There's so much information on social media, so many different opinions. And what happens while you're going through limbo and you're in a place of indecision, you're getting so much feedback. And it's not even like they're trying. It's just you're getting so much intake. And what'll happen is, because you're trying to make the right decision, because you're an honest person, you're weighing all the stuff that people are saying. And it's nice to have perspective, don't get me wrong, and diversity in your perspective. But sometimes what you really need to hear from, who you really need to hear from, is from God. And you really need to do some internal investigation, internal introspection. You need to do introspection. And it's hard to do that when you're listening to a bunch of different voices. So for me, I had to cut those voices out because they were influencing my thoughts. They were bringing on me stuff that I hadn't even done. And I was like, man, is this me? Am I a narcissist? Like, I was thinking through so many things that going through that time. And I had to shut those voices down for a minute so I could hear the voice of God. But I'll never forget, on the first day that I went on the fast, the verse of the day was James. It was in James chapter 1, and it said that a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, and he should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. And it dawned on me that God had sent and set up some situations in my life for me to see that I couldn't receive any good thing that God was sending to me. And that in realizing that I couldn't do anything to change the plan of God for me, and realizing that I couldn't receive anything new from God, boy, that was enough to get me out of limbo, because I made the decision I made to leave my relationship because it was affecting my destiny, because it was affecting what I believe God had for me and where I could go. And then if I'm going to be over here putting myself in a situation where I'm not trusting in God's sovereignty and I'm not putting myself in a position to receive what's next from God, then how can I really be making a decision about my destiny? Right? And so this is why I left Limbo. And that's my advice to you. Like, remember that God has everything mapped out, figured out. He's sovereign. You can't do anything to throw off God's plan for your life. And two, we can't receive anything new from God if we're not willing to move on and make a decision. Like, if I believe that if I had made a decision to go back, God would have blessed that. Like, he would have gave me something different in that season. I just believe that because if I was made up about it, right, he could do something. But because I was double-minded about it, because I was in a place of indecision, he couldn't do anything. So, but I also believe that because this was about destiny, you got to get out of limbo. You can't fulfill your destiny in limbo. You can't fulfill all that God has for you in limbo. You have to move on. And I know it's painful, and I know it's rough, and I know people are going to think things about you, but let them think that. After this sifting of your life, after you have to go through a limbo season, there's a sifting where God produces in you this new level of unbotheredness, where you care more about his opinion about you than you care about anybody else's opinion. So I encourage you. I know it's going to be rough. I know it's going to be tough. You're going to cry. You're going to have anxiety. You're going to have anguish. But it gets better. And that was the hardest word, one of the hardest words for me to receive from anybody during this entire season. It's going to get better. And you can't see it in the moment. You can't see how it's going to get better. But I'm telling you, it gets better. I couldn't perceive it in the moment. I didn't know how to, but it does get better. But it only gets better when we move forward. It only gets better as we take steps. It only gets better as we partner with God, as we participate with God. And our portion is taking those steps. Our portion is putting one foot in front of the other. In the pain, in the issue, with the issues, with the isms and schisms. And trusting the sovereignty of God. And so limbo is not a place that we can live. It's not a place that God gives us our next. But it is a place where we can catch our breath and get ready for the next thing. So my hope and my prayer for you today, I hope this has been helpful. My hope and my prayer for you today is that I've said enough to inspire you. Maybe not to move on from limbo today, but to reconsider how long you're going to settle there. Don't linger in limbo. It doesn't help. But no matter how long you linger, God's timing will still be sovereign. God will still work out his plan in your life. And so, hey, I really don't feel like talking about subscribing and liking your notifications, but if you want to, go for it. And I just hope this helps. That's the big thing. No matter where you are, no matter what you've done, no matter where you started in life, where you are in life, everybody, and I mean everybody, needs hope and help. And I hope you got that today. Love you. Bye.